Okay, space detectives and pareidolia police. We have another interesting find here on Mars. This image is from the Curiosity Rover and was taken in 2014. So we're going back a good 4 years now. This is from Sol 513. Here's the information at the bottom of the page. Sol 513, 2014. Okay, so you can check all this. Links will be below as usual. And this image is pretty cool. Not brilliant quality, but not terrible either. We have lots of sort of debris and broken bits of rock and stuff like that. And also, just here, we have another statue head. And this time, it's not a humanoid or something like that. It looks like a cat. So, without further ado, there's also one or two other things in here. There's like a little skull there, which looks like a little humanoid skull. And there's also a skull next to the cat here, or something. So, without further ado, let's show you what I've got. Here's the image, and this is completely raw. I've just enlarged it so it doesn't pixelate too much. And look right here, this area here, we have what looks like a little head of a figurine of a cat. And even if you don't do anything to this image, and you don't have to brighten it or anything, you can see an eye just here. Right, the mouth here, big ears at the top, one there and one behind there, like that, and another skull or something, maybe a possible carving just next to it here. I'll show you the enhancements in a second. There's also some other little things. A lot of these things are so small it's really hard to tell what they are, and I'm sure some of the other things are skulls, like this. This looks like a skull. You've got teeth, you've got a nose there, eye socket there, eye socket there. This looks like a small ape or something. You've got teeth there sticking up. You can see those jagged teeth just there. A bit vague, a bit hard to get any real detail out of that. There's also something here. This looks like another one with a nose here, the mouth. I haven't even enhanced this yet. I'll do a little clip of this actually. Really distorted. This may be part of a statue, don't know. And there's also other things in this image that look interesting. This kind of row of rocks here that's a bit weird. Some of you might have some other ideas about some of these things here. So I do advise to download this image and take a look at it yourself. And all we got to do really is enlarge it a bit, stuff it with pixels, and brighten it up a bit, and you can see all sorts of things. Now that's weird. I didn't look at that before. So some of these are probably just interesting rocks, but not all of them are, as I have established before. Here's the enhancement with the raw clip as well. So you've got the raw image here with the enhanced clip on top of it here. And I found this just yesterday. And there we are. And you can see I really haven't enhanced it much. I've kind of added some contrast. I've added a bit of a colour filter to it just to make it a bit bluer. And that's about it. You can see I haven't done a lot. You don't need to really. If you've got proper objects that are real and not just some kind of optical illusion, you shouldn't have to enhance them much because they're solid objects and they're sitting right in front of the rover on the ground. Unfortunately, the rover's images aren't very high quality, but luckily this is quite close. And even though this is very small, because it's closer, we can see just enough detail to work out what we're looking at. So there we have it. I mean, you've got the eye detail here. Let's look at if you compare the enhanced version to the raw version here, there's not a lot of difference. It's just a little bit easier on your eyes to look at this one, and it's a bit brighter and a bit more contrast in there, so you can actually see the shapes and details better. But when you get in really close, it doesn't actually help. It helps if you kind of sit back a little bit like that. You can see it tightens up the image then slightly. Also, on the, that happens also on mobile phones. If you look at an image like this on a mobile phone, because the pixels are more dense, they're closer together on a mobile phone than they are on your television, for instance. The image looks sharper. So having larger images isn't always a larger image isn't always better. It depends on how you view it. So there we are. Looks like another part of a figurine that's just sat there next to a little skull or another figurine head. Now, the Egyptians did bury cats with them in their burial chambers. Perhaps this was a burial item. As I've said before many times, I do think a lot of the things we're seeing, i.e. statues and statuettes and figurines and that kind of thing, and little mummies and stuff like that, were probably buried. And what we're seeing are the remnants of burial areas and burial grounds and burial buildings, perhaps, that have been eroded away. And these were burials that have been eroded, and we're just seeing things exposed in the sand. I'm sure if you dug under this sand, there'd be a lot more to see, including huge possible sarcophagi and figures and all sorts, mummies perhaps. So there we are. Really cool, this one. I was really quite pleased because there haven't been many cats found on Mars so far, and I was beginning to get a bit worried that there was only sort of monkeys and humanoids, but it's pretty cool. I mean, the eye detail is quite amazing. Even in the raw image, you can see that eye. See the pupil just there. Look at the pupil. Let's go in a bit closer. It's definitely there, and it's a very cat-like nose there and mouth. But it almost looks like a hybrid, like a humanoid type cat. And you've got that pupil with an eyelid, and some pretty good detail there, even when you get in close. It's quite amazing. So, and it's not the first cat that's been found, so if you think this is pareidolia, well, this is another one. This is one I published a while ago, back in April, and I got it in a few newspapers, this one, but not many of them would print it. Only one or two did, and it sort of went a little bit viral for about a couple of days, but not much really. And this is not far from here, but this is Sol 2003, so this image was taken much later on, but the rover hasn't moved much in that time. It's only moved probably a couple of kilometers, couple of thousand meters or something. So it moves extremely slowly from one area to the next, and at a snail's pace, taking loads of photos. And these photos are really small. Yeah, it's 1,000. Well, the width is 1024 by 914. This is the BR2 version of the image, which is not the largest one, but it's the clearest that I've got here. So yeah, these are small. There's not a lot of pixels in there really by today's standards, but these are small images, and what they do is they stitch them all together into panoramics to look at. But I mean, this isn't terrible because these things are quite close to the rover's camera, by the looks of it anyway. And there it is, just there. So there's lots of little weird things in here. That thing behind it may be a skull or something, but they're so small, a lot of these things, you can't really tell. There's not enough detail. If this was a high-res camera, that would be a different story altogether. We'd be able to see a lot more intricate detail and see whether these are actually teeth and eyes and things like that. But luckily this one was just big enough and just close enough to see in detail, so it looks rather nice. And it's not the first cat to be found. The Sphinx basically isn't very clear, even though it's right up near the rover. This is a much more recent image. The recent images are actually worse. This is about the same distance away from the rover camera, yet is a much poorer quality image for some reason. I don't know why that is. It's almost like they're not focusing the camera very well, or there's a fault with it. And you can see a line coming up here. That's actually a fault on the camera that's been there since very early on. But there we have it. So that's the lioness, I called it. This was in one or two newspaper articles. Not bad detail on that, but a bit grungy. But it doesn't help when you have these shadows. When you've got a shadow coming across the thing, you've got to really brighten it up to actually see any detail. So there we are. That was it, really. I will be coming back to this area and doing a couple more videos about some of the objects I've found in this area, because I have found quite a lot in the last couple of days. So there will be more. The question is, what is the thing next to it? This thing here. You've got these eyes. You've got an eye there. You've got an eye there. You've got quite a wide nose. And you've got... Let's get rid of those eyes a minute. you've got some teeth detail here. If you go in close, you can see that the brighter parts here, sort of jagged mouth detail as it comes down like that, if you see what I mean. So there is some details there, and there seems to be nostrils here. There's a dark spot there and a dark spot there. I don't know if you can see that, but it could be a carving, it could be a skull, but there's not quite enough detail in there to tell. And it's got this kind of ear thing hanging down like this. I don't know if you can see that. And there seems to be one on the other side as well, just there. So that could be another type of creature. It could be a skull, it could even be a carving, as I said. Don't know. But very interesting indeed. I like it when you get two things together like this, because they're less likely to be a coincidence if they're together than apart, I think. So, answers on the postcard as usual. What do you think? Is it a cat? Is it some kind of hybrid? Is this a little monkey or a mouse or a little dog or some other kind of creature? Who knows? Was it buried? Like a lot of these things may have been in burial mounds. I have found lots of statues, and most of them are near mounds, either at the bottom of a mound or near the bottom of the mound. And the sand had been blown away, and you've got these statues kind of revealed. So I do think these were burial mounds, and there have been things like sarcophagi and mummies as well that I found as well. So it looks like the culture on Mars, at least at some point, was very similar to the Egyptians, and were into cats and buried cat statues with themselves, like the Egyptians did. In fact, the cats that were buried with the Egyptians were often mummified and wrapped up and then put in the tomb as well. So there we are. So perhaps they were doing something similar on Mars. Very interesting. It'd be nice to find a whole one though, not just a head for once, but for some reason, mostly just heads lying around. And a lot of people asked about that, and I just think that they're just broken, and the way the heads are carved, that the heaviest bit is at the bottom of the head. That's the widest part, so that's more likely to stay upright. Although some of the statues I've published recently have been found on their side and toppled over, like this one here. So do check out the playlists. There'll be a link to these. There's the statue playlist here. Where is it? Oh, it's not here. Well, anyway, you can see some of them here. They're not always upright, but most of the time they are, for some reason. And they're often propped up between other rocks, like this one, or this one. And usually at the bottom of a ridgeline, like these are. So sometimes you get things out in the open. This thing's right at the bottom of a ridgeline. So I think these ridgelines are not just ridges and mounds. They are actual burial sites. And these skulls here, which are a different part of Mars altogether, taken by the Opportunity Rover, this image. These are at the bottom of a ridge as well, and are thousands of miles away from the Curiosity Rover, these skulls. And there's a whole bunch of them here. So do check some of these out. There's loads of cool stuff here that I've done recently. Views are really down at the moment for some reason. It does seem rather odd that if you actually do videos that show something definitive that can be recognised as something similar to what we have here on Earth, like this, or the Sphinx statue thing I did, or the other statues, they don't seem to get viewed very much. It's almost like YouTube prefer to promote videos that don't really show anything. Don't understand that. Undefined objects that can't be recognised, or things that are probably just an optical illusion, seem to do a lot better. I don't know why that is. Very strange. And when you actually do videos that show lots of clear objects like statues and skulls and that kind of thing, they tend to get held back. Maybe it's the word skull itself is a word that isn't allowed anymore, or something like that, or statue on Mars may be a censored sentence or thing to say. Who knows? So there's something strange going on there for sure. But there we have it. Cool. And links will be below to the main image as usual. So do check out some of these other videos that I've done recently of statues. There are many, many more. And this playlist has got dozens of. It's actually got 37 videos in it, but some of these videos have got 3 or 4 statues in. So there's about 40 or 50 statues so far. I've actually lost count now, and most of them were found by me, but one or two of them were sent in by people for me to do videos of. And there's lots of burial things here, and some of them are really quite staggeringly stunning, and some of them are really quite scary. Some of them are quite beautiful, some of them are quite ugly. So some of them are kind of like gargoyles, like you would get on the church, and are really kind of devilish looking. And some look like the Cyclops statue looks like one of those big Mayan or Olmec heads, I should say, the big round Olmec heads that you get in Mexico. Some of them are tiny little things like that one. Some are made of gold, like this one, the gold burial mask. But most of them are carved of stone. Some may be made of clay and baked. I have found sculptors' tools and stuff like that on the surface. So not all of them are carved out of solid rock. I think some of these are actually moulded and made of clay and then shaped and then baked in the sun or in an oven or something. And a kiln, I should say, yeah. And I have found a thing that looks a bit like a kiln as well. So I'll put a link to that at the end. So that's interesting. So thanks for watching, everybody. I hope that wasn't too long for you. I will have more videos on these objects coming up in the next few days. I've found lots and lots of things, as you may have seen if you subscribe to my Mars Magazine page on Facebook. I usually put them up there first for you to have a look. So take a look at that if you haven't already. I'll give you a little sneak preview. Just here. There's some other people's posts there. There's 1 or 2 things that look like, this thing looks like a kind of carved piece of art, almost abstract looking. I'm really not sure what to make of it. It's got 2 eyes here and teeth here, but it's also got a kind of face carved into it here. This looks like it was part of something, and it's got these odd kind of angular parts to it. So I'll be doing a video about that. There was this thing that looks like a dead animal or some kind of dead thing with an arm with fingers on the end, lying in the dirt, sort of half buried. So there's lots of cool things. So come along to Mars Magazine if you haven't already, and you will get the free app, which has had thousands of downloads so far. On the download page it only says 1K, but it's not. It's more about 5K by now, I think. They won't put up the counter, is static on there for some reason. I've complained about it, but there we are. Honestly. But yeah, there we are. So check out the Lioness and some of my other playlists, and I shall see you soon. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like if you haven't already, and share it on social media. See you soon.